Commission, isn't it? Building a Scottish economy. Oil would be taken out and we would look at economy growth on that element as well. I think that's really clever because it takes away that argument about oil prices.
And it kills that argument.
Exactly.
But a big challenge is, where do we get the right information about how much the oil revenue truly is, and to where really good calculations can be made. I mean, because the JERS figures are not much of a help. And the Treasury is so opaque about the way that it conducts it, that it's very difficult to get good information about that upon which to base solid calculations.
I think this is a challenge for groups like pensioners to find ways of finding that information so that we can be more specific in the arguments we're putting to people. But someone pointed out to me the other day, I was talking about oil, and he said, of course, there was hardly any revenue last year from oil. And I think that was largely because the oil companies, although things have taken a bit of a downturn, the oil companies last year, I think, did start investing more money in oil. And they were allowed to offset all that money they were spending on investment against profits. And I think, on paper, they hardly made any profit last year, but that's a one-off thing anyway.
I actually think that's key, because one of the things about the oil industry, and I remember coming across this years ago, funnily enough, in a BBC document in the 80s or something, before independence was on the agenda, and that's what they're saying. It's basically what you've got sometimes in the oil industry is a dip in profit, but what that means is they're invested in a longer-term future. So in the short-term level there is this dip, but it's because there is a long-term investment which costs money. So that's actually a good point as well.
But as soon as there is a downturn, all the naysayers and doubting Thomases immediately say, oh, look what's happening. How are you going to cope if you're independent? But they're assuming.
Aren't you relieved that you voted no last time? Because if you hadn't, you'd be screwed. And the thing is, it's the UK that's being
and they're assuming, people are assuming that because there's been a downturn, that it's going to continue at that level. But you can just as easily assume that, and this is based on what's happened in the past, that things will pick up eventually.
And the thing is, and as you said, as you correctly pointed out, all the tax revenue from it is going straight to the UK Treasury, and it
never sees a penny of it.
Exactly. Exactly. And of course they don't want to talk about that, and all the Macron report and all these lies over the years, you can't handle the money, or it's so phenomenally insulting, just
it's back to the old business, isn't it, of we're too weak, too poor, too stupid. And I think that idea has been debunked once and for all now.
It's melting away.
It still lingers on. It still lingers on.
In the last referendum, social media was huge in terms of setting out arguments, discussion, etc., etc. And somebody, I think once, I think it was Craig Dallas, said you pretty much tell the age of someone by whether they're using social media or not. Social media is not necessarily something, my dad uses social media, but it's not necessarily something that's natural, say, to pensioners.
No,
How
it isn't.
do we get the message
and
across?
Some pensioners don't use computers.
Yes, exactly. How do we get the message across this time that's more effective when we're trying to counteract a mainstream media barrage?
One thing that I think is important is what my wife and I have just started recently to do in Dunbar, is distributing leaflets to people, flyers with fairly short, punchy flyers, not very wordy things, because I always remember, for many years when we lived in England, we were members of the Liberal Party, and I always remember David Penhaligon, who was a Liberal MP down in the West Country, who sadly was killed in a road accident one winter, skidded, I think, on ice and so on. He always used to say, if you have something to say, put it on a piece of paper and stick it through the letterbox. But you've got to grab the attention of the person and get them to read it between the front door and the bin. I think
read this before it's going away.
And I think that's extremely important. It's got to be short and pithy and to the point.
And accessible.
And some people produce leaflets that are very wordy, and I think people look at them and think, oh, I can't read that now. I'll put it in my pocket and read it later, and then never get round to reading it.
Keywords and key notions,
that's
isn't
right.
it? Just get that kind of across,
I think that's important. I think
pensions are safe.
It's a matter of DIY, I think. I think we've got to do this ourselves, because really, no one else is going to do it for us. And the Yes campaign were extremely active on social media in 2014 referendum. I remember going to training in Glasgow about how to use Facebook and Twitter and all this sort of thing. And we did use social media an awful lot, but I think since the referendum, there's been some doubt expressed about just how effective it really was. Although we did a lot of work on social media, did it really
and how much of it was preaching to the choir?
Well, a lot of it was preaching to the converted, wasn't it, I suppose? That's right. Yeah. Yes.
But the key thing is, how do you reach the people that are are kind of in between, or maybe not that engaged, or kind of borderline, who could go either way?
Yes. I've been saying recently and discussing with my wife that I think one very good way is what we've already started doing: distributing leaflets, distributing flyers, just going around putting them through the doors. And I've been looking at the mosaic data to try to identify areas around in our locality where, according to Mosaic, it's believed there are lots of retired people, and concentrating in areas like that with the flyers to begin with, because you can.
And specifically talk about the pension issue.
Exactly. I'm not sure how reliable and accurate the Mosaic data is, but it's claimed to be fairly reliable, and it will give you information right down to individual streets where it's believed, from information that they've collected over the years. So I'm sorry if I'm preaching to the choir.
But
you're probably familiar with Mosaic.
No, I'm actually not, but I know the idea. And I mean, the thing is that it's like product marketing. They know their customers.
That's right.
They know,
exactly.
and it's all data, and they probably know how much most people are going to vote in different ways.
I think they do. Yeah. So I'm trying to make arrangements to be able to target some of these flyers that we're producing in areas like that, where we believe there are lots of retired people.
Yeah. I think that's a good
And the leaflet I produced recently. Oh, there's one there. I've got some there. I've been going around putting them on the table. It's just drawing attention to what I said earlier about what Philip Hammond had said.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Brilliant.
And we've got these badges made, of course. So I put the logo on there as well.
Look at the badge.
Yes.
Yeah. Pensioners for this.
You got it?
You got any spare badges?
I have. And oh yes. Would you like some badges?
Yes,
I'd love to
sure,
get some.
sure.
Yeah. I'll get some for you when we're finished. Where's my bag's down here? Yes. I'll let you have a few badges when we're finished.
Is there anything else you want to say? Is there anything you think that is important that's not covered?
I think we've covered it fairly well, really. My main concern is to try to get the message over to more pensioners and try to persuade them of the case for independence from a pensioner point of view, because at the risk of repeating myself, I mean, they were bombarded so much by all the press, nearly all the press.
Do you feel you're getting the necessary support from the movement around you? Not just necessarily the Scottish National Party, but the actual Yes movement. Are they taking you seriously and supporting you and giving you what you need?
We're registered with the National Yes Registry.
Good.
And we're hoping to get some help from them as time goes on.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're registered. We're joined now the Independence Convention.
Yes.
So we shall be involved there and have a seat round the table when they're deliberating.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to say at the moment whether we're happy with support that we're getting, because we're such a new organisation, only really been going for a couple of months or so. So we haven't really found out yet what support and how much support is forthcoming and likely to be forthcoming. We're hoping to get support from other groups. We're trying to do some networking with other pro-Indy groups like Women for Independence and other groups like that. So it's something that's very much it's very much a kind of work in progress at the moment.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. Obviously you're welcome to come and speak to us at Independence Live anytime. Anything you want to come and discuss with us, an interview or whatever.
We can do Skype interviews as well if you want to do it from home.
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah. And again, anytime you want to talk, or we can set up a Skype interview, and
that would be great.
Yeah.
Or even if there's something you want to put in writing for the blog. We have a blog which is very well read. If there's something that needs to be put into writing, it's a good place to put it.
And also beginning to develop research and where we can get information, where we can get the methodology to make the case in a more forceful way. Because in the first referendum, it was just like, it was so new, and people hadn't even begun to think about it. People were like, oh wow, independence, wow, okay, maybe. And you start listening to the arguments, but then the referendum happened, they voted no, and now they're like, wait, that was interesting. Wait, maybe, there's a lot of people like that may have voted no, but it's like, hold on. And then, the current thing with Brexit and all that, and all the uncertainty engendered by that, I really think that if we can, bring forward a good case based on good methodology, compared to a lot of these think tanks like the Institute for Fiscal Studies or others that just blast out this kind of propaganda to scare people. That's not, and these reports are not. Most are not methodologically sound. I mean, they just make these points, to scare people, but without the decent figures behind it. So
one thing I think we do need is we need to research what sources there are of information that will be useful, and that's something I'm quite keen to try to do, to try to find out where are the best places to go for more detailed information, because that's got to be one of our priorities, I think, as Pensioners for Independence grows, to find information that we can put out to pensioners.
And if we can't find it, or we find big gaps, find ways of getting that information, because there will be a lot of gaps. And I think that the UK government has always been a little shady on the books kind of thing, and so finding out how can we get this information, and also how can we make, if assuming independence is achieved, how can we have this information out there, and with solid methodology so that people can trust it, and good decisions can be made based on solid information.
Being able to trust it. That's important.
I think after Brexit there's a lot of issues.
Could I give you this? This is a project I've been working on. It's a written constitution for Scotland, and the beginnings of a legal structure and a treaty structure as well. And so I have it, and I've got my email on the second page where I do a little blurb. But feel free to get in touch with me at that. But have a look. Let me know what you think.
Yes.
And because I'm trying to get together a critical mass of people thinking about it. I gave a copy to Angus Robertson. I gave a copy to Derek Mackay, who's head of it. So I'm trying to, the more people I get together to get into this core of research, and I've got colleagues in different parts of Europe that would be delighted to help with this. I mean, for many academics that I know, they're like, yeah, I mean, I want to help with this. I want to make, let's create something better. So
maybe going upside.
The other slightly hopeful thing I was going to say, when we were talking about winning over people who voted no last time, is there is evidence. It's no more than sort of anecdotal evidence at the moment, but there is evidence of people who voted no last time saying, I wouldn't vote again this time. I would vote next time.
They lied to me. All the promises are broken.
Right. I've heard people say that, but I've heard other people say that people have said to them, I would change my mind next time.
Yeah.
And this is perhaps why Theresa May is worried sick about having another referendum.
Can I ask you, on the subject of Mark's kind of constitution, maybe one final question is, if we had a constitution in an independent Scotland, what would be the one thing you would want to see in that constitution?
Oh my goodness.
Just throwing a curveball.
You've really put me on the spot now.
Anything.
In a constitution, I think perhaps we ought to officially adopt a written constitution, because we don't have one. We don't have one in the UK at the moment, of course, and that might be a good starting point to adopt a written constitution, so everyone knows where they stand.
Yeah, and what the powers are. I mean, look at the Brexit thing, where they had to go to the Supreme Court to figure out whether prerogative powers can be used. I mean, if it was written down, you wouldn't have to go to the Supreme Court about it. And people know.
Exactly.
And the fact that and you could have things like positive rights. rights, the right to a pension, you know, in a written constitution.
And actually, importantly, that power could not be abused, because that's exactly what Theresa May tried to do. It's actually what stopped Donald Trump as well on 2 separate occasions now.
Yes,
So that written
that's right.
constitution is an absolute enshrinement and protection